Hi everyone, welcome to Legal Connect. Welcome to this space. I know for the past few weeks we've not been active on this space. It has been a challenging period. However, things are getting much easier these days, and it pains that we couldn't really join most of the debates that we're out on the cyberspace, and we are not going to go back memory lane. We're just going to pick up from where we are at now and deal with matters, even more pressing matters compared to the last few weeks. On today's segment, I'm going to be looking at three different topics. I'm going to be looking at two topics that has to do with the presidency, the Federal Republic of Nigeria presidency, and the other one has to do with the Senate being the National Assembly. Before we go on to looking at these three issues, I just wanted to say that thanks to our subscribers, I encourage more people viewing this space to hit that subscribe button. Click on the subscribe button to join this fold, to join this cyberspace, and get notification when new materials are posted. Hopefully we'll make that regular as we have always done. However, let's dive into today's matters. The first matter has to do with the presidency. Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari sending a letter to the National Assembly, or the Senate to be more precise, requesting for approval to get $800 million loan. He wrote to the National Assembly asking for approval for the presidency or the executive to get a loan worth $800 million. Taking into consideration that today's date is the 13th of May 2023, and the letter written to the National Assembly was read at the House on the 10th of May, which was Wednesday gone, and the request was to get an approval for the executive to obtain $800 million loan from the World Bank. And when I read this material, it is laughable, or just it is a massive joke that Mr. President is demanding at this 11th hour, taking into consideration that he only has less than 19 days. It's scheduled for May 29th for him to leave the office of the presidency. Less than 19 days. He is requesting now, it's about 16 days now. He is requesting to get a loan of $800 million. And what is this $800 million going to be spent on? According to Mr. President, the $800 million is going to help to alleviate the extreme poor people in the society. That is, those people that are very poor. Why? Because those people are going to be more affected when the subsidy on petroleum product, which is the gas, is it the petrol and diesel, when the subsidy is removed. These are the people that are going to be worse off. So in order to help them, there is going to be a cash payment made to this individual. These reckon about just over 10 million poor Nigerians. Sorry, can I rephrase that? It is not cash payment, because we've already stopped. We're now in a cashless society, so we don't hand out cash anymore. So they are going to pay this whatever amount they've earmarked for each person. They're going to pay it into the person's bank account. Do you see how daft that sounds, that they're going to pay it into the bank accounts of those people that are worse off, or that are extremely poor in our society? So let's look at this definition of extremely poor. What is the definition of extremely poor? These so-called extremely poor people, do they actually own a bank account? Because people that are extremely poor cannot operate bank account the way Nigeria operates their bank account. When you put your money into the bank, it doesn't come out anymore. You do a transfer, it is hanging in space. So how are Nigerians, if say they've got bank accounts, when this money is going to be earmarked or given into or paid into individual bank account, how are these people going to access this fund? Or half of those payments might even be hanging on the space, given the fact that nothing goes through anymore in this country. I just wanted to pinpoint our executives and our legislators to the provisions of the Constitution. That's the Federal Republic of Nigeria Constitution 1999 as amended. And Section 14, basically gave duties, gave principles to these people of what are the fundamental objectives and direct principle of state policy. It talked about the Federal Republic of Nigeria shall be a state based on the principle of democracy and social justice. It talked about sovereignty belonging to the people of Nigeria, from whom government through this constitution derive its powers and authority. Nigerians have kicked against this yet another loan being picked up or being requested by the federal government. Nigeria has kicked against him, the executive, obtaining this loan. But the executive has ignored the cry of Nigerians that they are tired of being subjected to loans after loans after loans. On the 10th of May, the Senate President Ahmed Lawan, requested the Senate to approve this loan. I'm actually tired of a figurehead rubber stamp Senate that cannot ask questions. There is no debate as to what this loan is actually going to be used for. The subsidy removal is going to start on the 31st of May or on the 1st of June thereabout. It is scheduled that the subsidy removal is going to kick in, I think, about 2 days after President Muhammadu Buhari leaves office. That is the anticipation. Even though when he came back 8 years ago, when he was campaigning about 8 years ago, he said he was going to remove subsidy. The whole 8 years he spent in power, he didn't remove subsidy. But he is now earmarked that subsidy removal is going to kick in on the 2 days after he leaves office. I don't understand that these people think that we are so gullible, so foolish, that we actually accept things that they tell us. So he's going to start removal of subsidy 2 days after he leaves office. That is the plan. And then he's taking this loan, paying this money within the next 16 days into people's account. People that are, inverted comma, extremely poor. They're going to pay this money within 16 days before he leaves. That is the plan. And it is reported that they're going to spend $53 million as administrative overheads. The fact is that hardship payments are made in foreign lands, and you use the same employee. Palliative payments are made in other countries. I've never read in other countries where cash payments, or where payments, not cash payments, where payments are made to citizens as grants, that they incur additional overheads. So Nigeria is spending, or the executive is going to spend $53 million as overhead to give away 800 million. So that would be 747 million that they're going to end up paying out, having spent $53 million to make that payment. And then at the moment, there is no information on the space or to the public as to who or how and when these payments are going to be made. All we know that it is earmarked for the extreme, with inverted commas, extremely poor people in the society. How did they go about pinpointing these over 10 million individuals, or 10 million extremely poor was there a census conducted? How did they identify these poor people? Because Nigeria doesn't have any database of information where they are able to ascertain the level of poverty individuals experience. How are they going to identify these individuals? Okay, let's move on. The President of the Senate has requested that this loan should be approved. For argument's sake, that this loan is approved, and then the money is paid into the executive bank account, there is no way in which the federal government is going to give out this payment within the next 16 days, given the fact that no infrastructures have been put in place to be able to make swift payment of these funds. And let's say the funds arrive at the federal accounts within the next 16 days. Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari leaves office on the 29th. Mr. Tinubu comes into office on the 29th of May. Then on the 31st or 30th of May, that 30th or 31st of May, Mr. Tinubu suspends every project that Mr. Buhari was engaged or implementing before the 29th of May. This both, including the subsidy, suspend everything to review, because that is the norm. That is what he's going to do. He's going to suspend everything in order to have understanding of which project to carry forward or which project to abandon. The fuel subsidy removal doesn't go ahead as planned. The loan has already been obtained. What is going to happen then? Is Tinubu's government going to share this 800 million or 747 million? Is he going to share this money to the extremely poor people in Nigeria? Or this 800 million, they're just going to grow wings and go into the thin air, just as every funds that have been borrowed before has done. We Nigerians are tired of our government. We're tired of our federal government, because what they tell us doesn't make sense. How come you've been in power for 8 years, and days before leaving office, you're telling us you want to share money to poor people? You want to take a loan to share to poor people in anticipation of a policy or a plan, a scheduled removal of subsidy that is going to kick in when you're no longer there. And you expect us Nigerians to believe this charade of lies. You brought hardship onto us Nigerians by this recoloring money, cashless society, Nigerians are finding it extremely difficult to live a comfortable life. And you've gone to the World Bank to take more loans. Even though Nigerians have rejected this next loan that you're obtaining, you've ignored the cry of Nigerians. Sovereignty belongs to Nigeria, not you, Mr. Buhari. The power lies with the people and not you. And meanwhile, Mr. Buhari is in London for a dental appointment. I'm actually shocked that he traveled 6,526 kilometers for a dental appointment. And we say Nigeria is a sovereign nation. A sovereign nation that its leaders don't even value the services of his own people. He travels to foreign country for checkup. He travels to foreign country for dental appointment. So does that mean that Nigeria doesn't have a dentist? Nigeria doesn't have a qualified dentist that Mr. President has to travel 6,526 kilometers. That is 4,055 miles for a dental appointment. I've never heard such before. It's only in Africa that the leaders patronize foreign products than their own products. And they said Nigeria is a sovereign nation that does not value its own services, goods and services. How will the Nigerians value their own goods and services when the public officers, the Senate, the President, the judiciary, when the mosquito bites them, it is straight abroad. When they cough unnecessarily, it is straight abroad. How are they going to develop the things of this country? Look at the other day, ASU was on strike, and Mr. President allowed these children to be at home for close to a year, if not more than. And we're saying that we are preparing leaders for tomorrow. They don't care about leaders of tomorrow because they believe that they will be in power tomorrow. So what's the point of training leaders of tomorrow? Look at the foreign country. Okay, let's take for instance the United Kingdom that Buhari travels to every time a mosquito bites him, every time he feels pain in his tooth, or it's time for him to do checkup. Let's look at the United Kingdom. Which of the principal officers in the United Kingdom goes abroad for medical checkup, for dental appointment? Few years ago, Boris Johnson, the former prime minister, almost died as a result of COVID. He was admitted in a public, not even a private hospital, a public hospital that the less privileged people on benefit goes to. The doctors that was attending to him is the same doctor that attend to the other citizens. None of our ministers, none of our government commits crime while in office. They are above the law. Boris Johnson was found to have broken COVID rule. Rishi Sunak was given penalty ticket for not wearing seatbelt. Let's look at the history of Nigeria. Which of the present and past, have been indicted while in office because they are immune? They cannot commit no crime. What type of country are we in? What type of leaders do we have? And that takes me to the next segment, which is Mr. Ekweremadu, who has brought disgrace to this nation. A qualified lawyer or barrister, well-traveled. What did he do? Wants to harvest the organ of a young man, whether the young man is 15 or the young man is 21, because of selfish interest. His plan was to harvest the organ. And what was promised? 3 million naira or thereabout. It is quite interesting that Mr. Ekweremadu profess or claim to have a charity that helps the less privileged, but then it is the same less privileged people that are already down. It is a paradox, isn't it? You help people that are poor, but you want to take the organ of that same poor people that you're helping, you want to take to save the life of your daughter or extend the life of your daughter. The promise the victim, the young man, a chance to work in the UK. So that means he recognized that Nigeria is gone. He recognized that there is no prospect in Nigeria, because the only thing that will motivate the young man to give up his organ is a promise of better life in a foreign country. And you are a senator in Nigeria. You didn't promise the young man a better life in Nigeria because you know that will not motivate the person. So you promise the person a better life in the UK. And I so much love the summing up of the judge, Justice Johnson. He talked about the wealth of Mr. Ekweremadu and power compared to the position of this young man that has been pried on. That in 6 months, Mr. Ekweremadu has received well over £400,000 in 6 months. Could you believe that Nigeria was still paying this man while being detained in the UK? He was being paid at least $30,000 a month or £30,000 a month thereabout. When he is in detention in the UK, he was still being paid his salary as a senator and his full allowance. So the wealth and power of Mr. Ekweremadu compared to this young 21-year-old individual or young man, there is no balance there. No matter how you painted that the young man was willing to help, there is there is the intimidation, there is the oppression because of the status of both parties. Mr. Ekweremadu, as a learned gentleman, knew that this was illegal because he was part of the Senate that passed the crime of harvesting of organ in Nigeria. He was part of the Senate that passed that law. Also, given the fact that he's a well-traveled person, he should be aware that this is a crime in the UK as well. But then that did not stop him. He built a network of corrupt people and directing their affairs from afar, not bringing himself to be identified as part of the whole setup, directing it from afar, changed the identity of this young man. And then the judge talked about aggravating and mitigating circumstances that led to the sentence that he gave. Aggravating in the sense that what makes the crime so serious, while mitigating circumstances, things, those good things that the court or the judge should take into consideration in order to reduce the sentence. And he talked about although the transplant did not go ahead, but that is not the determining factor of the crime. The factor of the crime is that the intention of the parties, the intention of Mr. Ekweremadu and co. to actually continue with this affair, if not for the hospital, who decided that, having spoken to the young man, decided that they were not going to proceed with the procedure. And even that did not deter Mr. Ekweremadu, because he was already making alternative plan of how to harvest yet another person's organ. And the defense counsel argued about the young man consenting, that should be taken into consideration. But the fact is that he consented out of duress. Look at the comparison, the the wealth and the power of Mr. Ekweremadu compared to this young man's abject poverty. And the judge, Justice Johnson, mentioned that he could not even afford, that's the victim that could not even afford transportation from Lagos to Abuja, I presume, during the process of his facilitating his travel. And now the young man is at risk of coming back to Nigeria because of the influence that this man wields. And I am sure and I know that the United Kingdom government are going to change the identity of this young man just to protect him. However, I hope his family back home here, they are safe. And then the judge mentioned that he was going to put, in taking into the consideration the sentencing guideline, that it was going to be a category 2 harm, which is just below the severe harm, because Mr. Ekweremadu did not withdraw from the process, even though his intention was to continue with the process. However, the hospital refused to carry out the procedure, and so is going to the Justice Johnson stated or added that Mr. Ekweremadu was piloting the affairs from behind the scene, having carried out a high degree of planning because he didn't want to be identified. So he was a shadow in the background. He was the driving force of the whole process. He was funding the whole process and providing advice, especially to his daughter, when he asked his daughter not to sign an affidavit stating that she was related to this young man. And so the daughter did not sign. And then when it comes to the sentencing, he said the starting point is 10 years imprisonment for Mr. Ekweremadu. But taking into consideration the aggravating factors, which is the victim was vulnerable because of his age and poverty. Mr. Ekweremadu had a profound understanding of the impact of poverty on people, how it blurs their judgment because of the carrot that Mr. Ekweremadu has dangled in front of this young man. And Mr. Ekweremadu gave direction so that tight control was exercised over the victim. Mr. Ekweremadu tried to get someone else to exploit in the same way, and he rapidly identified another victim. And then Justice Johnson took into consideration all the mitigating factors, things that would support Mr. Ekweremadu's case in order to have a lesser sentence. Mr. Ekweremadu, according to Justice Johnson, has his own health challenges. He doesn't have any previous conviction. Person of good character. How would you categorize him? This is the question I've asked. Categorize him as a person of good character when he's been dubious, masterminding these whole affairs. How can he be a person of good character? No, look at that's the paradox that I was talking about. You have a charity helping the poor, but now you are plying on the vulnerability of those same poor people in order to satisfy your own personal agenda. And then Justice Johnson went ahead that he has had 51 pages of character witness. This is the part that actually annoyed me. Why did it annoy me? The Archbishop in Enugu wrote a character reference. The former president Obasanjo wrote a character reference, and these people wrote this character reference based on their positions as a former president, as the Archbishop in Enugu, and then the president of the Senate also wrote a character reference. So these people, they condoning what this man has done. And the also for Attorney General and Minister of Justice Abubakar Malami also wrote a letter supporting Mr. Ekweremadu to have leniency. That is appalling. Attorney General that's supposed to be preparing an indictment because Mr. Ekweremadu committed a crime also in Nigeria by removing someone for their organ to be harvested, which is a crime in Nigeria. Mr. Malami is supposed to be preparing an indictment to have him tried according to the Nigerian law, but he is supporting this man's plea for leniency. The Speaker of the House of Rep, the same thing, wrote a letter as well. And these people, they are birds of the same feather. They flock together. If this crime, a crime was committed in Nigeria as well, and they've swept it under the carpet, I'm begging Justice Johnson in the UK to pardon Mr. Ekweremadu. How do they look at the United Kingdom legal system? Do they think that the United Kingdom legal system is the same as the Nigerian legal system? They should realize that if Justice Johnson give a lenient sentence, the prosecution, the Crown Prosecution Services, has the right, the legal right, to have that appealed, to have the sentence appealed, that the sentence is too lenient. And also, if they are well informed, they should have realized that no one is above the law in the United Kingdom. I mentioned earlier on that former Prime Minister Boris Johnson was found to have breached COVID rule. He was given a fine. The current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, was issued a ticket for not wearing seatbelt. There are MPs, Member of Parliament, that have gone to prison for one crime or the other. There was one that was a Nigerian British MP that went to prison, and she was recalled, or rather the Labour Party removed the whip from her. There was another Conservative Member of Parliament who was caught driving more than the speed limit. Initially, his wife claimed that she was the one that was driving, and a few years down the line, the wife changed her story, and both of them went to prison for contempt of court because they lied. Both of them went to prison. And there are other MPs that have gone to prison for one crime or the other, and they expect that a parliamentarian from Nigeria will have leniency for such a grievous crime. They had another thing coming. Even the Justice Johnson did mention that because of the 51 reference, that is why he had to reduce the sentence to 9 years and 8 months. So a discount of 2 months for those references is a disgrace on the so-called leaders in Nigeria. Is a disgrace on us Nigerians that these people will be sending letters on behalf of this man for this crime that he's committed, removing a Nigerian from his country to have his organ harvested in a foreign land. And for the Attorney General, rather than preparing an indictment to have him tried also in Nigeria, he's writing a character reference for this man. So he was handed 9 years and 8 months, and to serve a 2/3 of that sentence. So by 2/3, it means that you divide 9 years and 8 months into 3 parts. 2 of that part added together, that is the term that he's going to serve in prison. And if you do that, you get 6 years and about 5 months thereabout. However, given the period that he's been in detention, that is going to be discounted. So he might be in prison for maybe another 5 years, 5 months thereabout, or just over 5 years thereabout that he's going to be in prison for. I'm not intending to talk about the other 2 co-defendants because it is not my place to talk about those. I'm talking about Mr. Ekweremadu because of his position as a public officer. That's why I am talking about him. He's brought disrepute to his office and to the Senate in this grievous crime. And I hope that the Attorney General of the Federation, whether the current one or the next one if Mr. Tinubu decide to change him, will revert back to this case and have an indictment prepared for Mr. Ekweremadu. And as he comes back after, say, 5 years, he should be tried as well for the crime he committed in Nigeria. We Nigerians, we need to stand up. These people are taking us for granted. We need to press home our demands. Sovereignty belongs to us. We should be seen wielding that sovereign power that has been given to us by the Constitution. These people, they are only out for themselves. I can't believe that Mr. Buhari, days before he leaves office, wants to start being a charitable person, sharing money to extremely poor. Even with the amount of salaries they've given to themselves. They say the country is poor. Why don't you cut down on your salaries? Look at the disparity between what the politician is earning and what the other Nigerians are earning. Look at the disparity, the benefit. You have a lifetime pension. You have so much money at your disposal for your own personal enjoyment. And the rest of Nigerians are suffering. And you still bring in laws to suppress their little hope. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. We are back, and we are back with a bang. Hit that subscribe button, and I will see you again very, very soon. It is your one and only, the anonymous lawyer, championing the call for us to stand our ground and have this country changed for good. Keep up the hope. This country is going to get better, and we are going to chase these people out of a government. Thank you very much, and have a lovely day, and I'll see you soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.